Hey guys, Kyle here. Got another awesome episode for you today. We interviewed Chris Dumont, Sergeant First Class, U.S. Army. Did roughly 20 years, just over, I think. Ranger, Infantry Division, his entire career. Competed in the Best Ranger competition in 2021. Was part of the initial invasion in Iraq in 2003. I mean, this guy has done it all. Absolute beast. Now he's out. Went through his own personal issues, mental issues, health issues, drinking issues. Kind of the same things that most of us suffer with when we get out. So the word is awesome. Definitely check out this podcast start to finish. He brings up a couple of really good, like Volk Rehab, the Bridge program, if you didn't know about that one, which kind of helps you bridge the gap between the military and civilian world as you're getting out. Volk Rehab, which doesn't, helps pay for equipment and stuff like that to go into schooling after without tapping in your GI Bill. A lot of really good stuff. Check us out. Please hit the subscribe, hit the notification bell so you can get an idea of when we're popping out our next video. Usually we're trying to pump them out about once a week. It's a little rougher than that with real life in the background, so it's usually about a week and a half in between episodes, but we're trying to do them quicker than that for you guys. So hit like, subscribe, share this with your friends and family. Let's get a community going here. Let's let everyone know what we're trying to do and who we're trying to help, right? Follow us on Instagram, on YouTube, on TikTok, and yeah, again, I don't want you to spend $1 on this, right? I just want you to share this with somebody you know, somebody you love, someone that may be going through something. And more importantly, if you know somebody who's gone through something or who's currently going through something and they need some help, they need some resources, have them reach out to us. We'll get them the right help. disorder.squad.pod@gmail.com. Again, disorder.squad.pod@gmail.com. Or they can reach out to us on Discord. Just Disorder Support on Discord. Same thing with YouTube. Same thing with TikTok and Instagram. Just Disorder Support. So give us a like and follow. Love you guys. We'll talk soon. Enjoy the episode. Hey guys, welcome back to Disorder Support, episode 5. I'm Kyle.
This is Zach.
And this is Disorder Support.
Disorder Support.
One day we're gonna get that together like
Nailed
it's
it.
supposed to be.
We'll get synced.
One day.
Get synced.
So today we have a very special guest, our first guest that is retired out of the military. His name is Chris Dumont, retired Sergeant First Class. Sorry if I have to look down at my notes because this resume is pretty fucking great, honestly. It was an infantry NCO, served from 2003 to 2023. Served in 25th ID, 2nd ID, 1st ID, 2nd Stryker Cavalry Regiment, 101st Airborne, and 1st Army. 5 deployments between Iraq and Afghanistan. Certified Ranger. Not only that, competed in the 2001 Best Ranger competition. Summited Mount Rainier. Hiked the entire Appalachian Trail in 2023, which is amazing. I think it's the PCT, is one of my goals in life. And now is an aspiring woodworker attending the North Bennett Furniture Building Program in the fall. Nice to have you on, Chris.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, that is honestly a very impressive resume, and I'm. Did I get all those units right? I think I did.
Yeah, I think.
Okay, that's a lot. They moved you around a lot, huh?
Yeah, I hit the deployment train in 2003, and it just launches from there. Yeah, I remember getting told we were deploying in basic training, so that was
nice.
Like we were going to war. Like the country was actually,
Yeah, 2003 was the initial invasion of Iraq, right?
Yeah. So I hit the 3rd rotation in the Iraq War. So
nice.
That was my first tour.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, not nice, but nice. Yeah.
It's
what you joined for, right?
Yeah. It's an experience.
Yeah.
Right.
It was interesting to watch the battlefield and develop over the course of 15 years.
Yeah.
Deployments.
No more soft skin Humvees. Go to like a full steel V-hull Humvee eventually.
It's
probably nice to get one of those.
Yeah.
It still exists.
We just kept adding weight to those vehicles.
Yeah.
Armor.
Yeah. So quite the resume. So you hiked the entire Appalachian Trail.
Yep. I think in 2022, 2021, I pretty much just set the goal. I had been on a small section when I was at the leaders course down there in Georgia. and I fell in love with the fact of hiking. And I was always just kind of loved being outdoors and sporty and running and all that anyway. But I was like, well, what better opportunity to take is, get out of the military, take that time and go just enjoy yourself, kind of reset. I think there's a lot of healing in nature. And it really helped. It helped me get back to myself, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I absolutely
You
love
missed the
that.
time.
Go ahead, Zach.
Say that again.
Oh no, I was gonna say, do you miss the time rucking in the military? Do you miss like doing ruck marches?
So it's funny. It's funny you said that. Exactly. I loved rucking when I was in the military for a lot of it, and then when I had to start training for Best Ranger, all love for ruck marching
Died.
went out the window. Oh yeah, yeah. We were rucking twice a week and putting about 20 miles of ruck time, if not 30, kind of like every weekend, and it was brutal. Ruck running is not fun.
No, that's miserable. That sounds absolutely miserable. It
gets you in great shape.
Well, yeah. So I got offered a slot at air assault school, and I had like a year left on my contract, and I was like,
Toughest 10 days in the Army.
I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm not rucking all that. What are you, nuts? You can keep it. You can keep the badge. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
No thanks.
Yeah, I got offered airborne school, so I didn't get airborne certified out of Ranger school like a lot of people do. It was personal issues I had to come back and deal with. But then later on, I got offered it again, and this was right when I kind of knew that I was going to one day hike the Appalachian Trail and all this. Like, you want to go to airborne school? And I don't know, I was a senior leader, and you can keep it. I was like, hey, I've got like 1 unit left, maybe 2. And
You're like, I like my knees.
Exactly. I was like, yeah, my back is already pretty jacked up. I don't need to throw weight on.
Funny story. Obviously, I was young and eager, right? I knew nothing. I don't come from a military family. With the exception of my grandfather was in the Navy. That's his ship there. But he, did a 4-year stint, got out, never talked about it. I don't think it was anything combat related. Like, just was a thing he did. You know what I mean? So I didn't come from a military family, so I had no idea what I wanted to do in the military. And when I walked into the Army recruiter's office, he goes, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I heard you guys jump out of planes. I want to do that. And that's how I got my airborne contract. So that's all I knew. Yeah. So
I knew very little going in as well. My stepfather was infantry, and I don't know if he was a ranger. It was kind of like there's people that want to claim a lot of that stuff, and you don't know because there's no proof, right? Or like and he definitely, after growing up, I was like, anyway,
maybe not.
But he influenced me to do like the whole infantry thing. It's like, okay, and for what it was worth, it definitely, I'm glad I did. It gave me the discipline that I needed coming out of high school, for sure.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I'll be honest, I didn't even know that there was like a specific, I didn't know what MOSs were at the time, obviously, and I didn't even know there's a specific job for infantry. I just thought everybody in entirety is infantry, right?
Yeah, no, that's a Marines, I think.
Yeah, probably. They wouldn't take me though.
I showed up at I remember when I signed up, so I was like 16, and I show up at the recruiter office, and I keep calling throughout the whole time. It's like this soldiers getting into the Army course. They do like this 6-week special course, and I kept calling the sergeant. I didn't know he was a sergeant major. I kept calling, hey, what's up, Caldwell? How's it going, Caldwell? And he's like, and then one of the E7's like, hey, you should really tell him to call you a sergeant major. He's like, he's gonna have a rude awakening when he gets in the Army. He calls a sergeant major, hey, what's up, man, by his first or last name.
Yeah.
And dude, I had no discipline at all.
Did he ever tell you?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. It was.
I would have just picked up for failure and been like, carry on, bro.
Right. 100%. That's what I would do.
Have fun at basic training.
It's weird though to have a recruiter as a sergeant major. That's weird.
Yeah, that's strange. Yeah. That's strange.
It was probably the station head or something like that too.
Yeah, the E7 was in charge of the whole station, and then I don't know why he was there, but then he went off to the 92 golf school. because like I guess he was like a cook or something. So it was really weird.
That's funny, actually. That was the job that I was going to go for when I joined
really?
the army. Yeah, I was
You wanted to
an
be a chef?
aspiring young chef. Yeah, and I went in there and I was like, I want to be a cook,
Yeah.
and my recruiter was like, no, dude, no, you're going to be a reheater, and you don't want to do that.
No. Oh.
I'm thankful for that, but he definitely didn't like. I scored pretty high on the ASVAB, and definitely kept that. Like he told me my score, but he didn't give me any context for it. He was just like, "Yeah, you got a 93." He's like, "It's good," and I was like, "Oh, okay." And like he's like, "You could have done it."
See, I also got a 93, but I'm too much of a narcissist. So the first question out of my mouth was, "Did I beat everybody else? Like, am I better?
Right.
I must be better, right?" Yeah. And they were like, "Well, yeah, that's pretty good." I was like, "All right, thanks."
Well, the scores show it.
Yeah.
It's still sitting on your fridge.
I did when I was talking about recruiters. They definitely didn't set me up for failure. So we had to meet, I think, twice a week. We did runs together. They drilled us on the phonetic alphabet, on ranks, and this and that. And I remember one time we were sitting there in the office after a run, and the first sergeant walks in, and nobody called the room to at ease, right? And the first sergeant walks up to the sergeant first class is there, and then the sergeant first class comes out of the office, starts screaming at all of us, makes us start doing push-ups and shit. And we're all recruits, right? None of us were in the military. None of us even knew. I don't think anyone knew to do that, right? So that was they definitely didn't set us up for failure. But I walked into basic training as a private first class. So I had some college, which got me my PV2 as a recruit, right, on my contract. And then while I was there, you had to pass two or get a perfect PT score. I don't remember, something like that, right, in order to get like another rank before you left. Yeah. And I did not do it. Shout out to my recruiter. I got close, but shout out to my recruiter who I gave guitar lessons to while I was waiting to go to basic, who signed off on it and gave me my PV3 or my private first class.
Yeah, you max.
Yeah, bro, you rock star. Yeah.
I did that same. It was like a delayed entry program where you like if you learn your phonetic alphabet, you learn your rank structure, and you learn like a few other things, like your cardinal directions or whatever it is. They'll be like, all right, they give you your PV2 because they realize that like the amount of information you really are going to gain from 1 to 2 is that.
I will say, and this is the opposite of what we're going for with this podcast for anyone listening, but genuinely, if you are trying to join the military, I highly recommend some flashcards. Learn your phonetic alphabet, learn your ranks, like learn the structure of what you're going to have to do, and be a good runner. Because
be in good shape.
I don't even, you don't have to lift, you don't have to be strong, but be a good runner. I dominated basic training. It was so easy for me. It was a fucking breeze. And
were you the Iron Soldier?
I don't think we did that in basic. We did it in AIT. I was in AIT. I don't think we did it in basic. I don't remember if we did. But I mean, I had a 5 minute 40-second 1 mile when I went into and it was thanks to the DEP program, right? The delayed entry program. Because I just spent so much time running and studying, and I remember driving down the road in South Florida, and we were talking about this earlier, it's completely packed. You're in traffic all the time. And I would just be reading license plates phonetically as they passed me or they were in front of me to practice. But I mean, if you are going to join, which this podcast will likely talk you out of it, but if you are going to join, prepare yourself. It will make your life so much easier when you get in.
Yeah. I think honestly too, in a structure like this, if there is young people that are thinking about joining and they're listening to this podcast or they watch this podcast, like it's not a bad. I mean, the everything's kind of really in a weird motion right now in this country, but I mean, really, it is. It's a good opportunity, and I'm thankful for what I did. Because it got me into a situation where I am now, where I'm retired and I'm about to go to school full time for 2 years and learn my passion. That's been my passion for the last 4 years, and that's furniture making. And I mean, and these guys don't this is the oldest trade school in America. They have been doing it since 1881. and they teach like real joinery, real building. And I wouldn't have this opportunity to follow my passion without the GI Bill or without the vocational rehabilitation program, which a lot of people don't know about, and they need to learn about the VRE.
How does that work?
So the VRE is essentially if you're disabled as a vet and there's something that for you to enter the labor force of what you want to do, like I aspire to like I want to build homes, right? And I like to build homes, but my body is just not where it was when I was in my 20s and my 30s. So they will take you and they will go, okay, we will rehabilitate you and give you a skill set so that you can be successful in a career path. And that doesn't touch your GI Bill. Now, the thing about that is, though, is you can't use one up and then try to use the other one up. You have to use one for a bit to where you can overlap them, essentially, and then you can transition into your GI Bill later. So, like, I'm going to use 2 years of my BR&E, and they still give you E5 BAH, either with or without dependents, depending on your marital status and your dependent status, for the location of the college you're going to. So my school's located in Boston, and the BAH I think is like $3,500. Don't quote me. But I live in Reading, or I'm going to live in Reading, which is 20 minutes north of that, where the cost of living is just a little lower and it's easier. But I'm still making that BAH for Boston because I have to live in that area, cost of living and all that other stuff. Plus, they'll pay for your tools, and depending on your disabilities and what you have, they'll work with the school to accommodate your disability in some sort of fashion if you need be. So like if you have home with ADHD and it's really rampant and you're structuring your classes are hard, they'll work with you. I kind of think about it somewhat as like the special ed program, but like, sorry, that's not what I mean. But what I mean is they help with a disability to make it easier for you to navigate school and to be able to be successful. And then you can continue
off and pointing right
though.
in between, so it's a 2-layer top, and then I did a strip of really expensive fire birch in between to give it like an accent.
So much information
and then
coming out of the service.
Yeah. And then the doors, those doors are the only thing that's actual hardwood walnut
know
on it.
yet what they want to
and then
do,
the inside
really want to do
maple because it was cheaper.
Moving forward outside of the service.
But no joinery, no dovetails, no dados, like just straight up boxes because I'm too lazy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, that's fantastic, man. That's really nice. I'd love to try to guess the wood, but maybe pine, walnut. Is it? Oh, okay. So that's not stain. That's just straight walnut. Oh, okay. Yeah. 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 Okay. Like a nice inlay. Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Miters with some glue and some pins
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
Yeah. Check.
Fasteners. Yeah, I mean that's
shout out to a guy who has no idea who I am, but check out John the Builder on YouTube.
On some little things,
oh, it's
I've just started.
I can get lost on his channel for literally days. So good.
To take my
to that. Oh yeah, him and Bourbon Moth are pretty good friends.
Professional. I can, my goal is to eventually just have.
Well, you're not a woodworker.
Custom furniture.
He does. In fact,
and
I built his entire kitchen in my garage.
This isn't a furniture podcast, but
yeah, in a weekend.
That just isn't made to last. And I want to make things with quality that people in 100 years are going to be like, oh yeah, I bought this artist or this woodworker from, Timbuktu. And that's fair. I bought a big bullet heater one year. We got to build to sustain.
And it didn't do anything for me. Every 20 minutes I was in front of this kind of world right now. So I stopped working in the winter altogether.
John the Builder. Yeah. I think I've heard. Yeah. You know who Bourbon Moth is?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well,
Nice. Cool. Well, honestly, awesome
okay.
question.
I think that's fine.
I'm going to dial it back
I don't know any of
slightly
these guys.
to where
I
you were
learned all
talking
my
about
building from Kyle.
Yeah.
you did
Kyle
the
helped me build
Appalachian
it.
Trail as a way to kind of like reconnect with the world
Yeah,
and
in a
feel
weekend.
a little bit
Yeah.
and kind of
Yeah.
be with yourself.
Yeah, you
right?
get good at it, and it just
That
flows, man.
that is
And
I love
like I'm
that.
definitely
Right. That
out
is
of touch.
something I
I
wish
haven't,
I did.
especially the winter.
That
My
is
shop
something
is down in my
everyone I
garage,
talk
and
to
I'm
wishes
too
they
much of a
did.
wuss to
Right.
go down there and be cold. I've done it too much.
I got 2 little kids. It's kind of hard now.
I think that's all of us.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I work for a home builder right now, so I'm outside in the elements for most of the day anyway. And then just come home and be like, I'm gonna go down into a cold shop is not something, I look forward to. So I don't know. Yeah. 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 Absolutely. That's good. Mhm. Yeah.
You still can.
Yeah. 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 Kyle, as you were saying that, man, like, I was thinking about this earlier too, because obviously, I put some thought into like before we were talking. A lot of soldiers don't have that opportunity, and I'm an anomaly when it comes to this because the most retired identity. They haven't dealt with a lot of trauma that they've, brought forward from their childhood into their careers that have now reinforced those negative behaviors. And it's coupled with an environment where alcohol is prevalent and it's rampant. And it's not enforced, but it's also, I mean, the bro culture is the bro culture. Let's just be honest. And I don't even like calling that because we do have to be more sensitive about this kind of, that kind of frat culture is prevalent in the military, in microcosms all throughout, and it just reinforces all of this behavior. They get out and they don't do a reset. There's nothing to be like, okay, now what? You know, um, and so finding those small areas, if you can, as a married soldier, as a soldier with responsibilities like that. I was lucky; my daughter was a lot older, and I was single at the time. I actually just came out of a big breakup. Some of it was a little bit of a point of contention because of the fact that I wanted to, I wanted that time after, and there was resentment being held there. And anyway,
Well, and that's a huge thing, right? Because people are going to they're gonna resent, and this is for everyone out there listening, right? They're gonna resent you for taking time for you, right?
yeah,
They're going to, and you
well,
need to be
there
able
was
to deal with
yeah,
that because you have to take time for you.
yeah,
You really do.
yeah.
We
I
are.
think, yeah,
T- Tying back to the bro culture that people don't talk about, it's kind of taboo, right? And how alcohol is so rampant. We had one of my jobs in fifth group. I had to, as part of like the initial checklist, someone had to stop by my office, right,
mm-hmm.
and do some stuff, right. And I had two new Green Berets, fresh out of the Q course, came by my office, and it was a Friday at like, I don't want to say 4:45 or whatever. It was super late in the fucking day, and I was like, "Listen,
Yeah,
guys, just come back on Monday, right? This is gonna take us an hour or two. I don't want to do this now." And they were like, "Yeah, sure, no problem." So only one of them comes back on Monday, and I said, "Where's your buddy?" And he goes, "Oh, he died." What do you mean he died? And these are literally like probably 23-year-olds, like fresh out of
yeah,
the Q course, first duty station, all that jazz, right? And he goes, "Yeah, he died," and I was like, "Oh, okay." I thought he was joking, making a joke. I found out later that same day that he actually did die over the weekend at a party the team they went to threw for them, and he ended up drinking so much that he passed out, and they laid him down on a couch in the basement of the house and
yeah,
on his back, and he suffocated on his own vomit as he was passed out. And I mean, and nobody knew, and you've got some of the best medical experts that were at this party, right? You've got Green Beret medics that are some of the best combat medicine guys you'll ever meet in your life. And they had no idea, right? And it's like, that's just the culture. Everyone was drunk. Everyone was having a great time.
And it was nobody's fault, really. It was just the culture, and it happened, right? And like, it's horrible to see. No one wants to see any soldiers die that way. I mean, no one wants to see soldiers die, period. But it's hard, man. And because like, and even the people that see that too, right? Like they are going to compartmentalize it. They're going to continue to soldier on, right? Yep. And I know that like a lot of people I know it's kind of taboo, I know in the combat arms world, to be like, oh, the world, the army's just getting softer and this and that. And like, we talk shit on it all the time. But I think in some sense, we need to treat these soldiers like people, right? Like humans, kids, right? Coming out. I think something to adapt. And again, I haven't been a recruit, or I haven't really been in a year and a half, and I haven't seen that side of it. First Army was a training unit. I wasn't in an operational. But is having like a mental health evaluator, like at recruiting stations maybe, or having them in basic training where they can talk about some of the crazy stuff that I mean, let's be honest, right? Enlisted soldiers, right? I don't know the statistics, but I'm just going to go off the cusp and say about 70% of them are coming from a lower income or some sort of family that, could potentially have had a trauma past, and background.
I would argue it's higher than 70.
I'm trying to be conservative. I'm trying to just like
I'm part of that. Part of that 70%.
I think we all are, right? Mm-hmm. I think we all are. So I mean, 3 out of 3, right? Out of just a roll of a dice. So again, and I think it follows obviously, that kind of individuals, but it's hard to like have all of that pushed forward, and then you have an identity crisis at the end, and then coupled with all that other stuff and all the other abuse and all of that, and soldiers are going to fall apart. We don't do a reset, we don't do an upgrade. Like we were talking earlier, is we upgrade and maintenance so much of everything in our lives. We upgrade our furniture, we upgrade our living costs, we upgrade our computers, our digital devices, our phones, everything that we interact with. But the one thing that drives all of our motor function and our behavior and our emotion, we do not upgrade or go into very often, right? And there's trained professionals that help us navigate these kinds of things. The complexities of our brains and emotions, hormones, chemical responses, is so intricate that people have to take 6, 8, 10 years of school to get master degrees for these things and PhDs. And we think we can handle it all on our own because we've done it for 35 years, but probably in a very unhealthy way. And it's sometimes very beneficial to have an outside point of view to say like, hey, I am a trained mental health professional, and I do see some very triggering or red flags in your behavior, and let's talk about them.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you said earlier, and it was such a good analogy. The military is a college frat with guns and grenades, right? And that's what it is. And imagine the trauma that your brain, or I guess maybe not trauma, but the way your brain remaps itself to say like, yo, I'm part of this cool. I remember hearing in the Army a lot, like, you're part of the biggest gang in the world, right? They used to tell us that all the time. They used to say that too. Right? Yeah. And so imagine hearing
E4 Mafia, right?
Right.
Like, all of those terms.
Yeah. Imagine hearing that you are part of this group of men and women that is just the most badass, lethal, murdering machines on the planet. And they're your boys, right? They're the people you go out drinking with, the people you go out to try to hook up with other people with. You know what I mean? That you go get smashed in Nashville on the weekends with, and then you go to combat with, right? And then you get out, and the world is just flipped. And all of us think, okay, well, I'll be fine. I know how to navigate this. I can figure this out on my own. And the truth is, you can't. The truth is you can't. Your brain is no longer wired, and if it was, depending on your childhood, your brain is no longer wired to operate at the normalcy that the civilian world operates at. It's not.
Right.
It's just not. So, all right, cool. So that's all really good stuff, honestly, and probably we'll probably dig into that a little bit deeper as we go on. So tell us a little bit about your transition, your physical transition from when you got out, like maybe a short time frame just before you got out, preparing, right, and then how life was actually in the year and a half or so that you've been
out. Preparing was, I think the first thing that I did transitioning out was just figure out like what my goal was, right? Like what did I want to see? And I know everybody talks long-term goals, and I hate saying it's cliche and all that, but it kind of works. Is look in 5 years and be like, where do I see myself? Where do I want to be? And then just, I mean, it's what we train to do, right? Especially as like, if you spend a lot of time in the service, you learn to backwards plan all the time still. I actually write lists in weird medical priorities, just like priority, routine, urgent, and it's engrossed, it's ingrained. Anyway, so I prioritized that task. I found a passion. I was like, well, who am I? What am I now? I didn't want to go back into comic books. I didn't want to go be a cop. I didn't want to go, great, cool. A lot of my colleagues, a lot of the people I served with went out and became project managers. And I think there's a part of me that I don't want to make other people's salaries for them. I don't want to make other people's wealth. I want to make my own wealth. I want to be independent. I can't. It's hard for me to have a boss. So I found a goal, and then I just kind of figured out, okay, well, what line? Because the Army is going to offer, 40 different dozen options for service members when you get out. A lot of that is noise that you have to just clutter through. And so I picked an internship opportunity with the CSP program, which is offered in Washington. It's like you can reach out and be either like a truck driver or you just go to training, and your command, if they allow it, you can take the last 180 days essentially before you start leave of your term to kind of go into a job placement training program essentially. I built an internship with a local home builder here in Washington. They trained me for about 3 months, and then I started, getting paid after I got out. And so that really got my foot in the door of building and my passion of woodworking and furniture and things like that. And so I kind of continued going from there. And I always had the goal of doing this reset, right? I don't know if you were looking for more in depth of like how I prepared myself or
whatever.
Essentially, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, whatever's on your mind.
Yeah. I was going through therapy up until I got out of the military. I think that therapy is a beautiful thing, and the fact that we focus on time to help heal our emotions during a portion of transition where you're all over the map. It's hard to structure like what you're going to do next. Who am I? Again, we talked the identity crisis, any kind of trauma that you might be dealing with that's bottling back up. It's a good thing to take that time and talk to somebody about that's trained to deal with those things. So I was working with a therapist. He really helped me remap how I saw my relationship with my daughter, which was a huge turning point for me and a very hard issue that was going on during the military. And so then when I finally kind of took my leave of absence from work, I kind of planned it all out. I was going to take a month off from during my trip to just go snowboarding. And so it was during the winter, and I camped out in my truck, and I hit all these different mountains, and I met all these different people, because I needed to get away. I needed to just figure it out, what my time was going to be looking like going forward and who I really was. Because the Army is not where it's a part of me. And I think that's hard, is like people to release themselves from that identity of like, I am a soldier and that's what I'm here for. And now all of that power, all of that rank, everything that was given to them throughout their career, in some situations, yes, it still does help them and move forward. But in most, no one cares if you're a sergeant first class or a master sergeant coming out. The civilian sector is brutal. And it's all about, can you turn a profit for the company you're working for? And I was like, I'm not going to be someone's puppet. And so I went on that hike. I did a lot of thinking, a lot of lone days. Just I'd turn my music off sometimes in the middle or during the mornings, and I would just listen to the sound of nature and think about, what's bothering me today, or who I want to be, and how I want to focus my energy towards the person I want to come moving forward.
Trying to find that peace.
Yeah, I mean, and I did. I mean, don't get me wrong. I have moments, and I struggle with, I think, reintroducing into a society of civilian world where being compliant is just seems like it's
difficult.
Yeah, but it's expected, and I think that's the hard part. Is just expected from people just to. I say it all. Shut up and color, and. I'm not one to do that. I never really have been. But
I had so I work in the corporate world now, right? I work in the aerospace industry.
I'm sorry.
Actually, I should probably cover my work logo. I work for those guys still, if anyone's asking.
Okay.
No, I don't. But that's let's just say that. So
zooming in on this.
Yeah, right. So today I was in an executive review where I was presenting an issue we had right over the weekend, and I was getting berated in a professional way, right, for a decision I made last week, and even to this exact moment I stand by that decision, and I wanted, I had to defend myself, and I wanted so badly to just be like, listen. Shut the fuck up. Like, you're wrong. Like, I did the right thing, and I'm gonna sleep just fine tonight because I did the right fucking thing. And I can't do that. I had to say, understood, and then go on mute, right? And even in my defense, when I had to speak, I had to very carefully choose what I was gonna say, because you can't just talk. You know what I mean? You can't just explain yourself in this world. Yeah. And it's difficult. It's really difficult. And the first thing I did when I got out of that meeting was call one of my mentors and be like, hey, I'm going to lose it. I'm so fucking angry right now because she's fucking wrong. And I just want to say you're fucking wrong. Like, I did the right thing. And I can't, right? It's just not acceptable. And so it's extremely challenging.
Yeah. I had a conversation today just like that. Like a situation that... I told you guys earlier, I've been kind of dealing with my apartment complex and management and all that. And they want me to be able to break my lease. They want me to cough up a large sum of money. And I was just like, there's no way you'll work. They won't even bill me. I was like, well, what if I can't come up with that kind of money? They're like, well, you have to move out. I was like, what's the other option? Like, work with me here. Like, I don't mind. Like, don't get me wrong. I don't want to pay you that kind of money, but like, how can we work through it? And it's written in your lease. It's like, come on, man. Like, you can't. They expect me to pay almost $4,000 to move out of my apartment a little early, and so I was just like, and I was furious because they wouldn't. There was no wiggle room. There was no negotiation. This was what was written, and poorly written, by the way, and that's, you're gonna shut up and color, And I'm just like, where are my rights? Where are how does corporations get away with just being able to gouge civilians like this on a daily basis? In the service, we had some protections there, right? If you went to JAG with that kind of crap, they would be like, man, no, Snake, right? And it's not and I'm not, ending my lease for a nefarious reason. I'm going to college, I'm going to go to a trade school,
right?
If that was the military, they would have been like, got you, bud. You're fine.
Yeah.
But
and when we were I was thinking about this when we were talking about this earlier, but I wanted to wait till we were recording to say it. Um, and that's one of the most difficult parts that soldiers don't understand when they transition out. Because you're thinking, oh, like when I got out, I was making like $23,500, right? Whatever it was, something stupid. My first job out of college was like 56, and you're thinking, well, hell, I'm rich, right? I over doubled my income. That's fucking great. But what you're not thinking about is how expensive the electric bill is, how expensive the water bill is. Add the rent to that, add the internet to that, right? All this shit that's covered when you're in the barracks, when you're in the barracks. Yeah. All this shit, your food stipend, right? Or the DFAC, right? All this shit is it adds up so incredibly fast. And you get hit with a situation like you're in, which I told you, I also got hit with almost the exact same situation when I broke my lease on my apartment, my first apartment when I got out. And you get hit with that, and it's like, they're telling you have no option. But like, we're gonna fucking destroy your credit, which will destroy your life if you don't pay us this $4,000. And it's like, where the hell do I come up with $4,000? Like
in the middle of a move, right? And like, I'm moving across the country, right? Like I'm not like down the street, And it's that. I think the humanity has gotten sucked out of the corporate and consumer world where when I was growing up, the customer was always right, and now it's the customer's never right, and you never give him any kind of. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying all companies are like this. A lot are like this now, especially if they're trying to sell you on something. But it just seems like we're going that direction, and I think that service members are going to even have a harder time getting out. And again, I'm dealing with just my microcosm here in Washington. I haven't seen, and there's places like when I was on the AT, nothing like that. And I think that's what's pushing me away from the model of living in this American, like, hustle and bustle society. And I'm going to go out into the woods and kind of live more of a peaceful life. I'm going to, and don't get me wrong though, I have to work for it. I'm going to have to struggle for it, but it's just, I'm going to shape my life, and it's hard. I know a lot of people that don't grasp their life, and they go, this is mine, and I don't have to let other people control how my life is going to look. I have dreams, I have hopes. You should put that in your forefront rather than I just got to make a paycheck until I can make that dream happen, right? Or, shape it. It's yours. Every in and out of it, your mental structure to like what your bed looks like to what your car looks like, right? Be smart about it, but
Can you guys believe I never rented ever? The only time I rented was a room from Kyle, but literally my whole life never rented.
Good for you. Hold on to what you have right now, because man, I'm telling you, I'm 40 and I'm renting right now. And I'm going to build later, and I've already have a plan, and it'll work. But
and it'll work.
It'll work. I'll make sure
it works.
It'll work itself out.
Yeah, I've been. Yeah, that's one problem with like the ADHD and stuff like that I do have. Like it's, I'm always like my brain just doesn't stop.
So somewhere in that cabinet behind me is a very rough, nasty schematic that I drew on paper. With an architecture ruler, right? So all the dimensions are within scale of a 2-story, 4,000 square foot, 4-bedroom with a loft and office and all of its, and then a completely open concept downstairs, 3-car garage that I designed for myself. That one day I will build, right?
We're gonna have to talk after this.
So we definitely.
No, the good thing is the school I'm going to teaches design first. Like that is the first structure. It's all pen to paper, and I definitely melting minds with other people that see the similar things, because that's essentially what I'm going to do. Is I'm going to buy some land. I'm not going to tell anybody where yet, or at all. And while I'm in school, I'm just going to save. Excuse me. And I'll pay on the land. Hopefully I can get it for a pretty decent deal. During my trip out there, I'm going to scope out some plots and save up some money so that I can start, septic, pour foundation, get electric running, and then start the build. And really all I need is some electric and a shop. Really, a temporary shop will work, and I can at least get it going, you know.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
So,
So, okay, so your transition out of the military world, honestly, is a benchmark so far from what we've had. I wish a lot of people would take this as a benchmark, right? And schedule your priorities, understand, kind of where you want to go, not exactly where you want to be, because a lot of folks that get out don't really know where they want to be or who they want to be, and that's fine. You don't have to know that, right? Take some time for yourself when you get out. Find your peace, right? Find a good way to live in your own head and transition into the civilian culture as best you can. Go to therapy. I love that you said that. I love that you normalized it, and I cannot harp on that enough. Go to therapy. And, even if you think there's nothing wrong with you, just go talk to somebody, right? It's just someone to hang out with if you want to feel like it's that way, and just be like, yo, this dude pissed me off today because of X, Y, and Z, right? I mean, that's what they're there for, and they're going to help you walk through all that stuff. So I can't. Your transition is a benchmark, and people need to know that. People need to follow that.
thank you. Yeah.
So that being said, I mean, I want to ask you, what would you do differently, knowing what you know now? Is there anything?
For like the retirement process,
No.
or
Just transition
like,
to the civilian world.
Yeah,
But
transitioning.
obviously, you probably would have negotiated in that contract for a no,
Yeah.
a no loss, broken lease. But
um, I put some thought into it, but like honestly, like I mean, if I would have done anything different now and then, I probably would have set myself up a little bit more financially safe. Don't get me wrong, like I'm good. I would say make sure your debt is absolutely in control, because obviously with the transition, it's gonna bring on more or other payments that are gonna come unexpected. Um, right? Like at first, it always looks great. Like the first 6 months was phenomenal. I was on trail. I didn't have any real, like, I put my stuff in storage. I didn't have that. So, but I was making disability and as well. So I would say finance is definitely like making sure, and then set up yourself for that career. If you do know what you're going to do, like figure out those right avenues, and obviously just keep your options open.
How
If you
much
don't,
how much time do you need to do all that, you think, before getting out? How much time do you need to
I,
spend?
I I'd say that the way the military's model is right now with 24 to 18 is probably still pretty good. I think the hard part about that 24 to 18 is you're working with command still. You're working if I would say this is the biggest like thing, and I think most vets would agree with me on this, and probably a lot of senior leaders would agree with me on this. Is find a unit on your way out, unless you are just like locked into a responsibility of command or that you can't get out of or whatever. Try to find a unit that will give you the leeway to transition smoothly. So like I was in First Army. And it is a more lax unit where, if the National Guard aren't training, I mean, you're doing small stuff, but you have a lot more free time and you can kind of take a knee from it. So I'd say try to find an OCT job. That way you can transition with more time towards your family, and it's not going from you're doing command paperwork and all of this, and now you have 6 months to rush to retire because you're doing it while you're trying to command or while you're trying to be a leader in a major operational unit. So that was really, I mean, that was good for me. It's not really something that I wish I had known, but I'm glad that I did do that, and it kind of just happened that way.
like I said, benchmark.
Yeah.
It really is.
It did. It did. Like I got a great opportunity when I got into First Army. I was maybe in there a year, and not even. I think it was 6 months, and they came up to me and they were like, "Hey, would you want to compete for Best Ranger?" And so I competed, or I trained and I tried out for the team in 2020, and I made the team, but then they canceled it because of COVID. And so I came back the next year and trained again, and I competed with a good friend of mine now that and the 2021 competition. So then coming out of that, and I was pretty hands off because I was I was a division athlete at that point. and then after that, essentially, I started my retirement, and I had my 18 months. So I worked right into that, and they gave me that time to be able to be like, hey, start taking care of everything you got to take care of, because it's a lengthy process getting out.
So that's really nice. I want to get your opinion on what happens when you don't have that opportunity. So like episode 2, I think it was, we had someone on who talked about, they did that same, I forget what it's called, CPC, CSC program you
CSP,
did?
yeah.
CSP, where they were doing OJT, on-job training, right? Their last 18 months or whatever it was, 6 months, I don't know, 180 days, 6 months. And they got a new first sergeant. And the first sergeant at formation one day realized she was not there. And then called her into his office and said, where the hell were you? And she goes, well, I'm in this program, right, to help me transition out because I'm getting out. And he said, not anymore, you're not. And he cut the paperwork and pulled her back in. And that's pretty bad. That's really bad leadership, in fact. That's terrible leadership. But what would be your advice to a soldier who's in a unit, let's say, like, for example, you were in the 101. We like to call the puking buzzards. I'm not a fan of the 101 at all. I've met a lot of folks in the 101 who've told me that their leadership is absolute trash, right? And so what is your advice to those soldiers, and how can they kind of prepare themselves if they don't have the same opportunity?
It's a hard thing to navigate, for sure. I think finding a leadership in your corner, for sure. And honestly, like if you're a good soldier, if you're doing your job and you're and you've made a contribute to your unit, chances are, let's hope that they will give you that opportunity. I definitely come from the infantry world, and I absolutely know that that's a pipe dream. But I mean, there are stipulations set in that will allow you to kind of fight a little bit back on that. But I mean, essentially, it is your command. I would say try to take it on yourself of doing any kind of, and I know it's hard, right? But it's how determined are you of reaching your goal, right? How determined are you? And I hate to say that of being like, well, maybe you just work harder. If you could take any kind of I would say back up a little bit further and try to set yourself up. If you know you have that kind of chain of command and you know that you're not staying in forever, right? Start setting yourself up for success prior to, right? Like start taking some classes, start trying to find those interests that you find some people in that industry that have your back, right? Like reach out to the CSP program and see if there's any way that you can kind of, finagle the system, right? I definitely have started to realize in my adult life that's coming forefront here is that the system is going to work you. It's just going to try to work you. That's what the system does. As much as we don't want to think that, it is going to work you. So try to work every avenue of the system as you can as well, because there are rights in place and there are things in place for soldiers to transition properly. It does stink that the point of contention sometimes is the soldier's own chain of command. But, use other avenues if you can. Like if that was a first sergeant that told him too bad, so sad, your dad, maybe try to figure out to say, hey, I want to use the open door policy and talk to my commander or my XO. Because I'll tell you what, probably those educated individuals that are behind those big seats that realize that college education is important for a young soldier and that has aspiring goals. And again, I'm not saying it's going to work for everybody, right? But it's use every avenue of approach that you can, right?
Yeah.
Because we don't just attack the enemy on one front, we attack it multiple. And I'm not saying to target your chain of command as the enemy, but it's just how you should fight any fight, right?
Right.
You should try to look at all avenues of approach and not just get funneled into one. That's actually a problem that I see with soldiers, younger soldiers coming in, is they find points of contention and they hit a brick wall and they're just like, well, I tried.
Yep.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Be a wheel. If you can.
That's really good advice, and I'd add to that because this is something I struggled with myself when I was younger. Don't be afraid to make an enemy if you're doing the right thing for yourself, right? And so when you say use the open door policy to go to your commander, your XO, absolutely do that, and don't worry about making an enemy of your first sergeant.
especially if you know you're going to ETS in the next 6 months to a year, right? Because you're never going to see this guy again. You never.
Yeah, I mean, you're getting out. You're getting out.
Yeah, and maybe you know, he makes you show up early for formation and beat your face for the next 6 months while you're going to night classes. But now you got to go to night classes, right? And maybe you have to deal with an extra 6 months of him beating your face, right? For those listening that aren't, push-ups, right? So, I don't know, beating your face. He's not literally beating you in the face.
Yeah.
But you know, maybe that's what you have to take. But take that approach and don't be afraid. Again, something I really struggled with when I was younger. I wanted everyone to like me, right? That's a complex that came from childhood. But don't be afraid to make an enemy if you're doing what is right for yourself. Don't be afraid.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, he's not, I mean, yeah, granted, he can make your life a living hell for a little bit. And that's on his conscience. And, you know, and you're going to just take it away from, and look at it, try to look at it in a positive way. Be like, this is not how I'm ever going to treat an employee if I ever have one. Or, you know, it's like, you know, it's just, yeah, it's going to build character no matter. I hate to say that, but
or muscles, one or the other,
or muscles, one of the two. But it's going to build something,
right?
Anger.
So
but
what are some challenges that you still face today that that stem from your military service that you still have to deal with, and how do you deal with those? Like I remember you mentioning, like, you go to therapy, you do all this work internally, you know, inside yourself, which I absolutely love, but you still have those times, right, where you're frustrated and you know, how do you, what's your outlet?
More and more lately. I reach out to my friends for sure. Like my mom, honestly, like she has been a saving grace for me, because I know my friends are busy and I understand, and I know my mom's busy too. Like, you know, but it's good. She's retired and she's kind of usually at home, and so I call her and I just like, you know, I'm like, Mom, I'm sorry, but I have to vent. You know, like this is really just, you know, my mom is one of my best friends. You know, if not my best friend, and it's good to have somebody in your corner to just be able to unload a little bit, you know. And then sometimes I feel guilty, you know, just be like always, chomping your ear off about injustices in life. But so I think something that I really struggle with is that it's living in the civilian world where in the Army, when I was in the military, I still felt there was a level of protection against soldiers' rights, right? And I know that, like, we have the legal system that's supposed to help and protect us, right? Lawyers and everything like that. But at what cost? Like, when your rights get infringed on in the civilian sector, you don't have a free lawyer to just go into JAG and be like, hey, like, you know, they're trying to rake me over the coals. Or
yeah, there's a lot of things like you have that you don't realize.
Yeah. So I struggle. I struggle with seeing the greener grass on this side, for sure, because I don't see it, like, and I just see it getting worse. My personal things I probably struggle with is that it's like the anger issue. Like I come home now more and more, and to be clear, I haven't been going to therapy for probably about the last 8 months, just because I've been moving so much and I was on trail, and so I've been noticing, like, I'm like, oh, I got to start finding a therapist again. I need to find somebody to talk to who's trained for this kind of thing, because I hate burdening my friends about this. You know, I'll call up my friend and be like, oh my God, you can't believe what they did to me at work today, or you know, this and that. Like, we all do it, right? But the anger inside just feels more and more, and it feels, gosh, I hate to say, but yeah, I'll say that, like, it does. It feels somewhat hopeless. And I hate to say that on a podcast like this, because I would hope that we're trying to inspire hope. And
it's real, though. It's real. It's really, a real feeling.
And it's really disheartening to feel that way, and to feel like I feel like it's hopeless that some of the societal norms that have become post 9/11 and the way we treat each other isn't going to reverse.
I don't feel like you saying that is a bad thing, because it's honest, right? And
yeah.
You know, a large part of this podcast is dedicated to my buddy Mike Meltzer, who committed suicide, right? And a lot of other folks out there that half my friends have at least
Anybody would have
if not been
disorder,
successful.
really.
Right, and
Honestly.
it's dedicated to them, to those guys, so the next Mike Meltzer out there knows that he's not alone in feeling this way and has a community to talk to, right? Because it does, you're right, like, and I'm still working on this on myself, like, when I get into a situation like you're in, I feel like I'm being trampled on and I must fight back. You know what I mean? Like, this whole lease thing you're going through, right? Something that's small, like, if $4,000 is a lot of money, but in 20 years from now, it's going to be insignificant. You're going to completely forget about it. Probably way less than 20 years from now, right?
Oh, yeah.
But right now, you feel like you're being trampled on, and you have no avenue of outlet. You have no help. There's no JAG, right? There's no one that you go to the office. You say, "Hey, how can I help work through this? I'm going to get you your money. I just don't have I don't have 4,000. Just here's $4,000, right? Let me just give it away, right? So how can I help you work through this?" And they say, "Nope, you can't. Give it to us, or we're screwing your life up," right? And in those moments, you feel completely trampled on and helpless. And that's a really bad place to live. And so it's true, and it happens, and it's honest, and I want everyone out there listening to know that you're not alone when that happens. We all are feeling that pain. And I was thinking about this while you were talking. I almost feel like, I know this is a podcast about veterans, right? But I almost feel like this is kind of like the Great American Awakening, because I feel like a lot of people are starting to feel this way about getting squeezed by corporations left and right, regardless of whether they're coming out of the military, right? I feel like that just adds another layer to the cake of shit we've got to deal with in our brain while getting squeezed, right? But I feel like this is a big problem we have in this country right now that we're dealing with.
Yeah. I think more and more is, and I'm speaking for vets and civilians here right now, like, and so are all of you guys, but for civilians, it's like we're expected to have like, we've made mental health, like, good. The good thing is it's becoming less taboo now, so that's good. But we're just trying to figure out how to keep our mental stability in an environment where you have to watch every company you get entangled with whatsoever. Like, even down to, if you just think about even just your phone, right? Like, every product you use, or every, like, and I know this sounds conspiratorial, but it's not. It's like, just if you just step back and think about, I was thinking about it the other day. I was trying to watch a YouTube video, and I think I had to go through 7 ads, and it just kept popping up, and this is YouTube. It's not like it's, but it's more and more. It's like, it's all in our face of, you just need to buy more. Don't look behind the veil. And I told my mom today, I was like, I need to stop looking behind the veil, because the things that you're just looking at, you just get more and more disgusted with. So I think that's my biggest struggle right now. It is my biggest struggle right now is trying to navigate the civilian world in a society that just doesn't care for the people.
No, it's all about the profit.
It's just a weird paradigm, right? Like, it's the people that are actually making the machine work are just getting completely bled dry we're just getting sucked dry by the machine. And I hate to say it, it's just exhausting. It's like, you're struggling your whole life to stay afloat. And the people I work with, I see them, and their struggle is way worse than mine. And I even feel bad, because I'm like, this is horrible. Like, I'm like, how are we like getting paid this, and not like, and I'm I gotta be careful, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I see the way that the market is. It's not a big secret that, like, the people that make the buildings, right, or the laborers, the people that put the hard work into the infrastructure of this company or this country, get paid bottom barrel. And it's the same thing with a lot of teachers, a lot of the public service workers, and all of this other stuff, that we make bottom barrel money, and we have to dish out almost the most of it to the government, the state, the other companies that try to take advantage of us. And a lot of us don't have the knowledge and the wherewithal of being able to use the loopholes. So it's a rat race. And
everyone asks too, they're like, where does that go? Where does that money go? You know what I mean?
Man.
I like, when I was overseas, they had it was called training and equip mission, right? And I'm like, where does that money go? Like, oh wait, that's our taxpayer dollars that we're just give out all this equipment to people that literally just throw it on the ground, or they burn it, or they pee on it, defecate on it. You know what I mean? That's just like,
Yeah.
that's not right. Like, why are we doing this? And then they stopped the whole thing. Like after a couple of years, it like didn't work.
Well,
But I'm like, that was like
Oh, yeah.
hard
I think
American dollar.
the whole war machine is a conversation that could take us 7 hours and never get to the end of it, right?
Right.
Probably.
But you're not
I mean,
wrong at all.
It's a
That was
microcosm in
experience.
a bigger problem for
Yes,
sure,
yeah.
you know, and the
I'm sorry, I signed
military
up for the Army when I was
defense.
16. I'm sorry, guys.
No, I get it. Everybody wants to point their finger at like why the country's in debt. Like we all want to say it's this and it's that. It's a collective of a lot of shit. Like it is overspending in federal budgets. It's the Social Security that like we just are never going to see in our era because it's going to get nixed or naxed because it is like it's. I think don't quote me, but I want to say it's like responsible for a huge chunk of the national debt because people they're dishing out more than they can. They weren't expecting people to live this long, so.
Well, they just cut back or advanced the retirement age, right? So
Yeah,
and then they're saying for millennials and further back, it's going to be like 82 or something is the retirement age to collect Social Security, which is total fucking bullshit. 82? Are you a psychopath?
80, I don't think I'm gonna.
Right. I ain't gonna live that long. Anyway,
82.
I digress.
Yeah.
So
You're gonna get a check to pay your hospice,
right, but and government overspending that's hurting us, and take this with a grain of salt because it was a TikTok video, but that I saw today. But it was like this guy going off on a rant because Northrop Grumman just got a multi-billion-dollar contract, and again, I don't know if this is true. I haven't verified yet, but he was complaining that Northrop Grumman just got a multi-billion-dollar contract to build a railroad on the moon so they can take supplies back and forth, I guess for rovers and such. A fucking railroad on the moon.
Crazy.
And we don't have free healthcare. My dad's still paying $600 for 2 EpiPens.
Oh, I'm so glad that I have healthcare. Like, my sentiments go up to people that don't and have to like fucking.
Do you go through the VA?
I go through TRICARE right now. I just haven't gotten the whole VA thing ball rolling really yet. Like, I mean, I've got my disability and things like that. I just haven't like gotten in plugged in with the medical system with them.
So I'm going to plug a loophole right now for anyone out there listening. The VA gives you lifetime coverage if you are medically disabled, right? So you can prove that's service connected, or if, like for me, I don't have any, I should have disabilities, but I never applied for them. So like for me, for example, when you're a combat veteran, you get 5 years of free healthcare when you get out. If you're you get, I think, 1 or 2 years if you're non-combat veteran. And in that 2 to 5 years, everything that you present as wrong with you, service connected, becomes lifetime healthcare. And everything that's not, does not. So, for example, like, I mean, every joint I have in my body is fucked up, right? Shoulders, ankles, wrists, knees, you name it, right? And they're all covered. But if something goes wrong, let's say with my spleen, I have to go through private healthcare because that's not covered. It's not service connected.
It's post getting out.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I highly encourage all of you to, within your first 5 years, if you're combat, if you did not serve in a combat zone, it's 1 or 2. You'll have to look it up. But in that first initial term, you get a free healthcare. Go say everything's wrong. My head to toe, I'm dying, right? And get it all, so you have lifetime healthcare because really you're gonna need it, especially in this country. You're gonna need it.
Yeah, Kyle, if I can second that too, like going to a unit as well that will afford you that time, like, is a good move to set yourself up for transition if you have that availability to do so, because of the fact that when I was about 18 months, actually probably about 2.5 years before retirement, I booked every medical appointment I could think of, like just to get everything checked out. I went to audiology for minor tinnitus. I went to like my knees, everything, carpal tunnel, because of the fact that, and don't get me wrong, like I'm 100% disabled, and like I've definitely like, but all of that stuff, like it helps towards your disability rating when you move forward, because like my carpal tunnel is rampant now, and so I can get treatment for that, no problem. It's all in my records too, coming out, because if you go into a labor job, if you're not just going to go into a PMM job, right, and just sit behind a computer, or if you're going to actually like do something that's labor intensive, your body's going to continue to still degrade, right? Like, we're carrying all those injuries forward into, this civilian world, and to expect ILE to, pay for it, or workers' comp or something like that, your company's not going to want to do that for you, or they're going to fight back for you, or, so get that health care. That disability is it's important.
It's like a common sense thing. You know what I mean? Like, you served, 20 years in the Army, like, what things in your body are going to be, broken down over that time? Look at the training in the Army. Look at the deployment. Like, look at everything that it, like, encompasses. It's like, all right, guys, like, I think we have a good idea, like, what his body's been through in those past 20 years, the physical and the mental abuse.
Yeah.
I would have, that actually brings up a good point, Zach. Like, I was thinking about when you transition to, if you are, be prepared to go back into, the mix, the ring, right? Like, unless you're getting picked up for a senior level position, if you're a young kid getting out of the Army and you don't have a college background, or if you don't have any kind of like degrees or certs that can help you in the civilian world.
That was me.
Right. Like, you're going right back from being a leader with maybe 10 to 12 to maybe even a company battalion size, to you're that guy milling the machine again.
You're the bottom of the barrel.
You're the bottom of the barrel. It's hard. It's hard to take orders from guys. And like, a lot of guys that I work with are like, look a little younger than my age, and so like a lot of guys will be like, oh, "You're young. You're still young buck strapping and all that." I was like, dude, like, I went through some wear and tear in my life. Like, swinging a hammer hurts. So, like, you gotta check your ego, man. Like, coming out, because that's hard for me.
Chris, help me out here if you can, because I don't remember the name, and I'm hoping you do. So you've mentioned twice now, try to get into a good unit when you're going to transition out. Try to get yourself in a good unit so that you have reasonable leadership. Something TRADOC sounds fantastic, right?
Yeah.
Where I'm going with this is, if you're in the military and you're listening to this, there is a phone number you can call in the military, and I forget what the name is, but it's basically placement, right? And you can call them and say, "Hi, I want this for my next duty station. Can you make that happen?" And they can look for open slots. Do you remember what that is?
So you must have gotten out probably.
Oh, is that gone?
A while ago, huh?
Yeah, 2014.
They changed that policy about right around close to where I was getting out, probably like 2021.
Okay.
Maybe 2022.
So scratch that.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. There's very, very little BroCon. If hopefully BroCon essentially is like a sergeant major calling up another sergeant major and being like, "Hey man, I've got this guy," right? That doesn't really exist so much outside of in or post transfers, like going from a unit to unit at the same duty station. HRC, so they went with a rating system now, so you will rate from top choice to bottom choice. But this is one thing they didn't tell you, or they didn't tell me, but I think it's commonly known now, is you have to rate every single option they give you. So if they give you 230 duty assignments, there's going to be a 230th duty assignment on that. Because the way that the algorithm is built is that if you don't rate anything, it's just going to put them in a random mix of your possibilities. So rate everything that is in your next selection process, or I think they call it like when your window opens up again.
Yeah. Okay. Good advice. Yeah. HRC is what it was called, and you should just be able to call your HRC rep and be like, "Hey, I really would like to go to Fort Lee."
You still kind of can, and it's all like face to face kind of thing. I know when I was getting out, I was on my list had opened up, and there was all these options, and I was like, "Oh shit, I've been at Fort Lewis for a while, like I'm gonna end up going somewhere." And so I wrote him an email and I was like, hey, I'd like stabilization. I'm 2 years out from retirement. I don't want to do any, I already have a house here. I'm building a family and this and that. My daughter's going to high school here and like I want to be there for her. So, I mean, if you just talk to them, don't get me wrong, sometimes you won't get it. I mean, obviously, we know the green machine will do what it needs to do. But again, goes back to use every avenue of approach you can, right? Yeah, hit up HRC if you can. When your window opens up, write them a nice email, tell them your situation. Be like, hey, look, I'm transitioning out of the Army. I've already done this operational stuff. I'd like to go into a broadening assignment of doing, and so I went to First Army. A good friend of mine when I was at Fort Lewis, Michael Bruck, and he's deceased now because of some of the same traumas that we've talked about. He took his own life, and it was a fantastic mentor and person to work with. He became the branch manager up there in Knox and for Ranger Branch, and I just gave him a call and I was like, hey man, my daughter lives in Washington. I'm trying to get out of the grind. What do you got? I want to take a knee. I was in operations. Up until First Army, I was in operations my whole career. I hadn't taken a knee for about 17 years. And so I was like, I'm ready. I'm ready to chill out. And so he sent me over there. And so that system, again, isn't really, available as much anymore. But if you can, talk to a few people and really just kind of have some weight behind it, you can usually grease a few gears here and there.
Nice. Okay, good advice. Good advice. So, I'm glad the conversation actually lightened up a little bit.
Well, we talk about trauma. You want to talk about trauma?
No. So, for everyone out there looking for the magic behind the curtain, right? Obviously, I sent Chris a bunch of questions, right, that we were going to talk about, and they're structured very specifically, right? Because the third one the third talking point we usually talk about is like what kind of PTSD or insomnia or anger and stuff you go through, right? What do you still struggle with, right? And that usually turns pretty dark. So the fourth question is intended to bring the conversation to a lighter aspect, right? So what are some strengths that the military has given you that gets you through? But the conversation got lighter on its own, so I'm very happy about that. But if there is anything specifically, like what are some strengths you took away that have really helped you be kind of successful and keep your wits about you and keep you really, I mean, we just talked about your friend taking his own life. We talked about mine earlier. Like what keeps you driven? What are some strengths the military gave you that keeps you here?
There's probably more than I can mention in the time that we have. And I'm not saying that as a canned response, and I'm not saying that to like bolster up the military by any means. When I joined the military, I lacked discipline, like in every sense of the word. I was a mess. I had no direction coming out of high school. And so just that structure alone changed my life. Absolutely. I'd say something that I don't see a lot of people have nowadays is situation awareness. To really just be aware of your environment. I say that with a feel of hypocrisy in some sense because I have situation awareness in almost every place I interact with, but I don't like filter myself very often due to the situations I'm in. Sometimes because I'm very opinionated with just my beliefs, and I think that actually is it's a bittersweet quality the military gave me, is that I will fight for what I believe in. I think that I get that from my mom, but also from the military reinforced that like I'm not going to be a pushover. I will fight my beliefs. So it made me headstrong, for sure. Sometimes that can work in my disadvantage, but in the most part, people understand that. Like I try, when I'm doing something, when I'm there for business, I'm a no bullshit kind of guy, and I definitely want to get the job done. Work ethic for sure was another thing. I think one of the biggest turning points in my military career was definitely Ranger School. Like if there's soldiers and they're watching this and they have the opportunity to go, if there's a school that you want that will test every limit of your capability, it is Ranger School.
I don't know that I want to hear this because I turned down a slot, and it's honestly I don't know if it's because I just think it's so fucking cool, right? But it's like the only regret. Like I turned down air assault and I was happy to turn that down. I missed out. I did get offered SEER school and I missed out. I ended up having to go home for a funeral at the same time frame, and I never got offered it again. But I did get offered Ranger and I turned that down. And I don't know why. Maybe I was in like a lazy phase. I was going to school at night. I was using tuition assistance to go to school at night. So I was pretty fucking beat between
priorities were different.
It is the one thing that I do regret is not getting that Ranger tab. And so I don't know if I want to hear this. That it's as cool as I wish I thought it would be.
Before we started recording, you were talking about funny stories or stories of like military and stuff like that. I have a story from Ranger School that like I tell some people just because like it definitely it codifies what I'm trying to say of like it will push you to a limit where you never thought your body would be able to go, and Best Ranger definitely reinforced that too. Training that like it was we were doing some insane 4-day workouts and it was just insane. It was your whole day. We were just doing physical activity. Anyway, so in Ranger School, I before I went, you have to do essentially an assessment. You have to do a bunch of them, and one of my last assessments had to do a 12-mile road march, as most candidates have to. And I had just got a new pair of boots that I thought were perfect size for my feet. They were minimalist. This was definitely during the big minimalist, like, craze where you want the lightest boot. And in my mind, I was like, oh, well, I'll swim in these boots because they're lighter, and then my heavier boots. But they were too short for my feet, and so I was toe jamming like the whole route march. My big toes were just... Yeah. And I got done, and I barely passed the road march. Take my boots off and my toes were just red and beat.
Blisters, the whole nine.
Right. Like, well, they just like my toenails were just getting pounded. And so I went off to Ranger School and my toenails started to die on those two big toes and I started to lose them. And I get through banning phase and then I go off to mountains and I'm in mountain phase. And it was right after my evaluation, my go, no go, essentially. And I had gotten a good feeling about it. Like I had passed and the guy had kind of given me like the whole, you did well, like you're going to go and move on. And I still had four days left of like the FTX phase. And we went back for like a 12 to 24 hour refit. And when I went there, I went to the medical station. I was like, look, can you do anything for these toenails that are falling off? And she's like, yeah, I got you, no problem. And so I lay down, and I'm exhausted. It's the morning, and you get very little sleep, obviously, in Ranger School. And I wake up, and there's blood like everywhere. And she had numbed up my toes, and she is digging with a cuticle file. And if you're cringy, just stop listening right now. But she's digging under the toenails, the ones that were growing underneath the dead toenails too. So she was ripping off 2 sets. And I was just like, what are you doing? She's like, I have to remove them like this or they're going to grow up like all funky and weird. And I was like, oh, okay, because I'm there to shut up and color, really. Like, you don't push back. And that's cool. And so she goes, don't worry about it. It'll be fine. I'll bandage them and I'll give you some concentration. It'll feel like you just clipped your toenails a little bit too short. And I'll tell you, man, that numbness wore off as I was walking towards my planning bays. And that was the most excruciating pain. And so we went to mission that day because we were going back out into our FTX.
Right.
And I look at the RI, which is a ranger instructor, and I'm like, hey, so I just got my toenails removed. I can barely walk right now. I've got a 60-pound ruck on my back with gear and ammo and all this other crap. We're about to go out on a mission where we're going to walk in the woods. And I was like, can I get like 12 hours just like rest? And then come and meet you guys. He's like, well, you can LOA, which is LOM, lack of motivation, which recycles you. You just do the phase all over again. And I was like, no, I've got my go. I'm good. Like, I'm gonna do this. Like, I've just got to run
Soldier through.
Right. It was so bad that every time I lifted up my foot, the weight of my boot hurt on my toe. And so they fly us out to our landing zone, and I get off the Chinook, and I'm walking into the woods. And, of course, every probably quarter mile, I stub my toe on the stump, or I hit a rock with my foot, and it just, after about 3 hours of just excruciating pain in my toes, my body just shut down my whole feeling in my feet. Like, my body just adapted. It was just like, well, this isn't serving us. And it was probably one of the most painful, but one of the most life-changing moments of like realization that mental capacity can overcome almost any body ailment that you're, like, our minds are phenomenal things. And if we really do figure out a way to harness and can tell our minds with our body connection, right? Like, we have these two systems that
was a mind
together.
Over matter thing, right?
It is. It's a body-mind connection that you can go, okay, this isn't serving me. I need to shut this down right now. And your mind just goes, okay, let's do this.
I'm going to be honest with you. I have tried that on a headache a few times, and it didn't work. The fucking thing stayed. But it wasn't killing me. It was just painful.
Right.
But that's, first of all, yeah, that's cringy as shit. My stomach's starting turning. Second of all, that is absolutely brutal. I mean, good for you for getting through it, man.
You overcome it, right? And it builds resiliency. It builds the ability to look at problems that, I mean, you have no option out and persevering through. Or you have an easy option out, right? I could have just been like, oh, I'm done. Yeah. Nah. This is a goal. This is something that I strive for. You gotta keep those passions and those near and dears in here, because if you let them go, like, you're not gonna strive and you're not gonna push forward. You're not gonna put that energy towards being that better person that you can be. Yeah. Right? We're just gonna sit in those self-loathing states and just say, like, well, yeah, I gave it my best. Did you? No, and you can give it more.
I love this and I hate this at the same time, right? Because and this is personal, right? We talked about my microcosm of me, right, earlier, where you said that about you. But it reiterates the fact to me that I should have fucking gone to Ranger School. So we have a, I don't know, you remember what it's called, Zach? It's basically a competition between all the battalions in group every year. And we compete on, like, strength and running and all that other jazz. And so one year, First Sergeant Arriaga, Ruben Arriaga, came up to me and he's like, hey man, do you want to be the runner for us? And I was a fast runner. At least I thought I was a fast runner at the time. But I wasn't really good for long distance. And we did suicides up and down a basketball court. I don't even know how many meters. Like, there was a limit. But I pushed to the point where I blacked out right on the court. Out. Couldn't participate. And it's multiple events, so I was still supposed to participate in the team event afterwards. I woke up in the ambulance, IV in me and all this shit, and I felt like such a failure. But looking back on it now, I'm like, no, I fucking trucked. You know what I mean? I went until my body physically shut off. And so, like I said, now I feel like this reiterates to me that I should have fucking got that tab. I should have went. But man, that's cool. That is fucking cool.
Yeah. No, dude. I mean, we all have the ability to push ourselves. Like, right, Ranger School is just a moment in time, right? It made me a good leader. It definitely taught me a lot about how to motivate soldiers in times when they are really not wanting to motivate. I had a buddy before I went. He said, just come to terms with the fact, like, the three things: you're going to be hungry, you're going to be tired, and you're always, or what was it? It was hungry, tired, and exhausted, like, all the time.
What year did you go?
I was 09-15, so 2015. I went pretty later on in my career. Like, I was in E6 when I went.
It must have been tougher too, as like an NCO going to Ranger School.
Honestly, it wasn't.
Did you expect it?
No, not really. Like, a lot of the RIs. One good thing about it, you're in the combat world, so, like, you've kind of already got a lot of that stuff kind of out of you. You've reiterated a lot of good tasks, and And honestly, like a lot of guys are like, "Oh, you're a lot older." Like I can tell. Like you go out. You don't go with your rank in either. So no one really technically knows your rank, but you think after a while, and those RIs will be like, "All right, well, like this is, we know a lot of this, but we're going to reinforce the big stuff." And I did well. I mean, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I did excel. Like I had some hiccups. By no means, I'm not a perfect soldier. I definitely stepped on my crank, believe me, in ways that I don't feel comfortable talking about it on this podcast. Not in any like nefarious or anything. Definitely wasn't the best. But I always did excel when it came to like just going and giving it my all. Like schools are not hard in the military world, right? Like they give you the answers for most parts. Like, I mean, the hardest school that I didn't graduate from, the only school that I didn't graduate from was Pathfinder. And that was just, if you want to go to a math just hellhole for 3 weeks, go to Pathfinder school because it's a nightmare.
I only know one guy. Zach, you should know him. Honestly, I can't remember his name. He was an E7. He was like the only Asian guy in 3rd Bat. You see, and that's not a stereotype, right? That he completed the mathematical course. That's not a stereotype.
He's Asian, right?
He was. God, I loved that guy though. He was like he was triple tabbed, right? That's what we'd call guys that had the was it Airborne Ranger and Pathfinder, right?
Yeah.
No.
It's a Tower of Power.
No, Airborne Ranger. Yeah.
Yeah, and Green Beret. Special Forces, right? He's triple tapped. But he had Pathfinder, which I think is the pin, right? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah.
But
it's the torch.
Yeah, he was the most humble, coolest fucking, like, he was the kind of guy that on the team, like, he was friendly to just goofy. You know what I mean? Just so fucking nice. Anyway, I can't remember his name. But
I don't know if Pathfinder made them do that, but
probably not. But he was the only guy I ever know that went and passed Pathfinder school.
It's a hard school. It really is, because it's all none of it's open book. You have to memorize multiple equations and have to be able to, if you're messed up at all on those equations, you have to input that data into other equations to come up with your final answers. And it is like my ADHD was just not letting me do that. Or I don't know.
You ever heard of calculus?
I try not to. But I'm just saying, like, so really the military schools, they weren't hard for me per se. I mean, they were a struggle. Like, it was challenging for sure. But definitely whenever I went to them, I just, you give it your all. You're there to do that school. So, just give it your best foot forward.
All right. So
cliche saying.
A quick 30-second elevator pitch to helping someone who's struggling mentally when they get out of the military transition to civilian world. And then, at least for the podcast section, we're going to stop recording so I don't have to edit for 9 days straight. But we can keep chatting. So,
get a therapist. I mean, really, it boils down to that. Like, if you're getting out, I would say a year before you get out, go to your behavioral health office. Just say, hey, I just need somebody to talk to about my transition out. I just want somebody that I can structure my thought patterns with. This isn't like I need mental health adjustment or anything like that. I need somebody to help me coach the emotional and the mental stress that is a huge, huge life change, right? And I mean, we talk about big life changes, starting a family, buying a home and all of that. Redefining your career and who you are, I mean, if you boil it down and you really look at it, is one of the biggest stressful things in your life. And to be able to navigate that intricacy of a process, I think having a mental health professional at your side and in your corner is the biggest help you could probably do. Just set yourself up for success and talk to your spouse and talk to your loved ones about it, and don't keep any of your trauma a secret, because it's not going to do you any good. Talk about it, give it a voice, because it's just going to eat away at you anyway.
I don't know if you guys knew this yet, but so like when I last time went to the VA, they're actually doing blood tests now on all the veterans to see if there's something correlated with our blood. So it's pretty interesting to see if there's like a pattern here for suicide or mental health behaviors. But like you were saying, this I think the biggest thing too the VA should work on is having more of that mental health, um, more disposed, or yeah, more disposed for us, because we don't really have that. Like I know when I signed up, and they were like, "Yeah, you're gonna meet with your therapist like once a month,"
Hmm.
and I was like, "Once a month therapy is like if you got somebody who's on the rails or somebody who really really needs somebody." And again, they have those programs where um, you know, it took me to where I was like to the point where I tried to commit suicide, and then finally, the VA, after I got admitted, they were like, "All right, let's hook this guy up with some therapy." So, and that's what they did. They hooked me up with a therapist. He was out of New York City. Awesome. His name was Eric. The guy was phenomenal. I was kind of
Hmm.
sad when like the program ended, and it was great. Like I actually like enjoyed like uh having more than just a once a month therapist. I was meeting with him on a weekly basis. And I really think that's the right approach. And that's something I hope the VA like sees like, hey, like I think a lot of these guys they need more than once a month, like they're on top of like again, like even civilians, like I'm pretty sure they meet with their therapist more than once a month. I talk to a lot of people, they do it, on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
And it's like, we got our problems plus PTSD, plus, just being, you know, through the ringer, while getting out and then trying to figure out everything else. So like it's all compiled on us, and it's a huge stress.
Yeah.
And so like, that's the message I would love for the VA to get is like, hey, like these veterans, they need more than once a month. Like we need, at least weekly. We need weekly, not just like peer groups, because not everybody likes to talk to everybody, in a peer group. A lot of people have
Yeah.
other things that they want to do a one-on-one, session. And so it's really hard. I feel like that's a big area the VA could definitely step up is have more of that, available to the veteran, so we can prevent, suicide or other, bad things happening to soldiers and just
Yeah.
anybody. It's just
So
Yeah.
and this maybe this will help somebody. And then for real, I'm cutting off the recording and we can keep talking. But but maybe this will help somebody. I initially sought therapy when because I want to make a dumb fucking amount of money in my lifetime. I don't not quite Jeff Bezos level. That's just egregious, and I'd give a lot of that shit away because I want people to have better lives than they do. But like a really dumb amount. Like I want to buy a Porsche 911 GT3 RS without sweating a beat about it. Right, spend $400K on a car and not worry about it. And I watched this TV show called Billions. I think it was on Showtime. And if you guys haven't seen it, it's a absolutely fucking phenomenal show. But it's about this guy who runs a stockbroker firm, right? But he is like cutthroat, right? Just like aggressive, total alpha male shit, right? And he has breakdowns, right? Because that alpha male mentality will fucking break you down. And he has a therapist that's in office that he can just like walk into her office anytime in his building, right? Then she only works for him and his guys that have to be alpha male 24/7, and it's so they can maintain that like drive, if you will, right, and deal with all the stress that comes with what they're doing to make billions, right? The show's called Billions, and to me, I was like, well, shit, I've got a lot of fucked up shit, and if having a therapist all the time that I can just on call that I can just talk to when I'm frustrated up against the wall, I don't know what to do. If that's gonna help me be dumb wealthy, I'm all for it. You know what I mean? So like, there's a million ways to motivate yourself to go talk to a therapy. For me, it was cash, and for everyone, it might not be. But it will help you in every aspect of your life, to include work. Right? No matter what you want to do for work, it's gonna help you be better at that, handling with the people and the customers, or clients, whatever it is. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I know you said you're going to cut it off, but I just wanted to, like, my whole journey with therapy, like, I got into therapy because I was having relationship problems. But that transitioned into my transition out. And just like you were saying, man, I miss my therapist. It was hard to like leave talking with him because, like the therapist before him was trying to kind of just do MRT, like resiliency training with me. And I was like, look, man, like, as I told him, I was kind of being a no bullshit kind of guy. I was like, I don't want to sit here and talk about textbook answers to my problems. I want you to talk to me. I want to get into what is actually problems that, I really encourage vets, and I really encourage all soldiers, fight for your rights when it comes to mental health. Like you were saying, man, like Zach, you were saying, they were giving you once a week with the VA,
Not even once a
once
month.
a month, right? Fight back, right? And it's really unfortunate that it took, an attempt on your life for them to wake up, because service members need to advocate for themselves as well. But once you do have a therapist that you trust and shop around, like not all therapists are treated equal, right? You might find one and you're like, I just ask them, be like, hey, look, like, is there anybody else that I can work with? I just don't feel comfortable talking openly with this person or whatever, work with them, find a good therapist, and deal with not just your deployment and your military trauma. Deal with maybe you had a great childhood, maybe you don't have any trauma from your childhood, but if you're like majority people,
Us.
you do have something, right? You have something that either A, you've suppressed, or B, you've been wanting to deal with, or you've been, self-medicating instead and numbing, right? Talk with somebody about that stuff, because that stuff is not going to go away just because, you don't have these other military traumas,
Yeah.
So, set yourself up for mental success getting out, for sure.
All right. Well, thanks, Chris. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
It's a fucking honor having you on, dude.
Yeah, I appreciate. No, dude,
Such a
I
great-
appreciate.
Yeah, thanks for being on. Honestly.
Yeah.